The fact that you signed up for HexEd tells me you're not somebody who wants to stay at this level. Hi guys!
In business, there is a perception that I think you need to be a bit of a dickhead, and hopefully I can say that and they don't beat this out. Should I start again? I have no idea what I'm saying.
It's about using the resources you have to make the world a better place.
It's going to sound very, very, very weird.
Oh, so cringe.
We're going to meet so many interesting people, and I just can't wait. Hello. Hi. Hey, Jax. Hi. So hello, people. I'm Jeanette Cheah. I'm the CEO and founder of Hex, and welcome to what we're cringily calling CEOnly fans, but I think it's hilarious, but my team is not so sure about it. Jax, how's your sound? Can we hear you?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yay.
Welcome. Hi. So everyone, you're live streaming online with myself and Jax, two founders and CEOs of edtech companies. I'm really pumped to actually introduce you to Jax because she's one of the most sassy, passionate, like gritty people I've ever met. She's got some amazing ideas and just the energy of, I don't know, like a never ending, like bajillion solar powered battery. So I'd love that about Jax. And we're going to talk a little bit about our early careers. We're going to talk about the journey of fundraising, what it's actually kind of like being a CEO and all the glamour that goes with that. And I'm really, really pumped to hear about Jax's experience with working with the gaming and eSports industry. So if you like that kind of stuff, we'd love to hear some of your questions. But straight over to you, Jax. Did you just want to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and, I mean, your background in what, recruitment and aviation and all the things?
Yeah, for sure. So GGWP Academy is an e-learning and influencer marketplace platform for gamers globally. I am the CEO and founder of GGWP Academy, and I started the company in 2018 when my son turned pro. As a pro gamer, got signed to eSports teams and started traveling internationally as a gamer. So it's been a journey. It's been a fun journey, and I love the industry that we're in. I also love the crossover that it has with so many other industries. So yeah, I have a good time. I like to work in gaming and esports, and it's really good to connect with other founders in the Australian ecosystem all the time. So yeah.
Absolutely. And now, just before I forget, I am dialing in from Fitzroy here in Wurundjeri land. Whereabouts are you dialing in from, Jax?
Awabakal land, Newcastle.
Nice one. And the rest of your team, you said, was in Sydney today?
Correct, yes.
Amazing. Now, I know that we said this is kind of a lunch and learn. I already scoffed my lunch because I was starving. I do have a banana, but I think I know better than to eat a banana on camera. I feel like that is just asking for trouble. So
I feel like that is, a good lesson to not learn.
Number one lesson of being CEO, never eat a banana on camera. And number two lesson was actually watching Jax pitch GGWP Academy in the way that you were able to so succinctly, describe what it is that you do, the problem that you're solving, etc. Can we talk a little bit more about your son and like how that journey evolved and what actually happened there? Like, at what point did you change from stage mum to we're doing business?
Stage mum. Do you know that there was a I'm trying to think whether it's an article or a podcast that called me the Kris Jenner of gaming. Absolutely blew my mind when I saw that in print.
I love that for you.
But my son started playing Pokemon at the age of 5, and he was attending local competitions, and more so he started to get better and started playing Oceanics and bigger and bigger competitions. And at the age of 9 years old, he was invited to the World Championships. And so I'd only just, I think I was probably halfway through my first startup.
Wow.
And so that was not a very economical time in history. And I just did a GoFundMe so that we could get, him to the US and get him going. And I thought, well, maybe there's an esports team that would actually, get behind him as a 9-year-old. Maybe it'd be good PR for them or whatever. And so I started building up his personal brand online. I started reaching out to esports teams. I started, building this brand around him as this 9-year-old pro gamer. and we had a couple of offers, and we signed him to a top tier esports team, and they paid for him to go to the first World Championships, which was great.
That's incredible.
As part of that contract, though, they made him become a content creator. They were like, you need to start producing X amount of hours per week of content.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, yep, I can commit to this. It's not too far out of my wheelhouse, so why not?
What kind of content was he creating? Like just doing his own streaming, or was he kind of explaining his like game tips? Like what kind of stuff did he make?
Yeah, so it was all on YouTube. He'd go live on YouTube every Monday night, and people would tune in and watch him play all kinds of, stuff. So he was playing Roblox, he was playing Fortnite, he was playing a bit of Overwatch, a couple of different games. So, but I always had to keep it quite PG, even though he wanted to play, CSGO and COD and stuff. I wasn't letting him. So, and I made him wait until he was, I think, at least 11 before he was allowed to play Fortnite on stream.
Oh, it sounds like you were really supportive from him from day one, which is amazing. And then at what point in that time did you go, hey, this thing that I'm teaching my son and I'm pulling together for him could be something broader? Did you have an aha moment, or was it a more of a gradual thing where you started doing it for more people and it just kind of snowballed?
Yeah, so what happened was I think it was the first time he was on national TV. And I realized just what this could be. But it was also the fact that he, in his first year, had earned about $15,000 in sponsorship. So those two things combined allowed me to believe that I was doing a fairly decent job of marketing and building a personal brand for him and things like that. And it was in that first year that people started to reach out to me and say, look, you've done this with a 9-year-old. Can you help me? What am I doing wrong? Can you maybe, take a look at my channels and tell me, just a couple of pointers on what you would do better or something like that. And so through helping those couple of other people in the Australian ecosystem, I thought, well, what if I put this into something that everyone could learn from? And I actually wrote about 20 modules of training, just short, one pages on X, Y, and Z, like, different topics. And when I put that together, it wasn't overly organized or anything else. It was literally just Google Docs.
Like you brain dumping, right? Just all of your thoughts and ideas.
Some of it was just written down on paper, even like it was just literally me and pen and paper.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine actually sent me a link to the lead sports accelerator in Berlin. And I thought, no chance. And he's like, just check it out. It's not, it looks like a great program. It looks like it's kind of focused towards gaming, esports, and sports in general. And so when I actually applied, I got into it, and I found out that it was actually backed by the Adidas family.
I mean,
and
just,
so
just some casual, like major branding, like no big deal.
What's that? Sorry?
Casual, like big backers, no big deal. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to note that they're no longer with Adidas, but their father or grandfather was the founder of Adidas, so Adi Dassler. And so, this family is all about reinventing and also supporting innovation within sport. And they saw esports and gaming as a part of that. And so they brought me into the accelerator for their first ever gaming startup in their accelerator. And it was really interesting to get, that the sports side of things interacting with what was gaming and esports at the time. So yeah, it's been a journey of getting started.
Proportions. That's amazing. And I think, they do say about Kris Jenner, like the devil works hard, but Kris Jenner works harder. And it sounds like you may work even harder than that. And I'm going to pick up I think we're up to lesson number 3 now of being a CEO, is like prototyping can take any form, right? It could be literally just putting words on a paper. It could be sketching. It could be the lowest fire thing ever. And actually, is what's kind of like interesting to hear you talk about your start with doing, working with your son and then a couple of other creators and gamers, and then turning it into the business. It kind of mirrors my journey a bit, because the very first business I ever started was I was still working at the bank, And I was like, I'm really good at doing like LinkedIn and resume. So I'm going to start a really like lo-fi career consulting service and help people like, zhuzh up their LinkedIns. And I would then I made this like personal branding survey that people filled in on my Squarespace website. And then just kind of like went from there. And then I guess now we've snowballed into a situation where we're trying to create, a whole generation of new talent and create a new way of thinking about talent and education. But it starts small, right? It can start really small. I think humble beginnings are super important.
And I think you and I actually cross over in terms of our humble beginnings. I started out a little bit in that recruitment resume kind of LinkedIn sort of space as well, and just doing a very similar sort of thing. And that kind of spawned from just having so many different jobs, and bringing that experience to, how do you get hired? How do you build a personal brand? How do you want people to see you in the public sphere and things like that? So, I think that you and I cross over a lot in that respect.
That sort of same seed of the idea. But okay, I want to talk about all of your many jobs, right? Because maybe
that's
not
a
all.
lot.
But could you give us I've heard some of this before, but I'd love the audience. And by the way, hi everyone, dialing in from YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and wherever you are. Are people still on Facebook these days? But anyway, thanks for dialing in. It's nice to see you all here. It's actually really, really cool to see all your comments. So keep them coming, and would love you to ask questions to both me and Jax if you like. We'll grab them and chat about them as well. But all of the jobs. So I think hospitality and retail are like important training grounds for any kind of professionalism. But tell me about your journey. Let's hear it. Let's give it to us.
All right. How far back are we going here? Can I ask?
How far do you want to go? I mean, it's CEOnly fans. You can like reveal as much or as little as you like.
All right. I'm going all the way.
Yeah.
I left school at 14. I think it's important to know that, number one, I wasn't somebody who went and did my HSC or, didn't see a lot of value in it at that particular point in time. And I just wasn't a very good student in high school. I didn't like the way that the learning was set up. It wasn't that I was particularly, stupid. Mm-hmm. I just did not anyway interact well with the way that education was delivered. And it wasn't until I actually went at the age of 21, I actually thought, let me just test myself and I'll go and do Open Foundation over 6 months at uni. And I did that 6-month course doing sociology and graphic design. And I got a UAI of 96.9. So for somebody who had kind of, bummed right out of high school, left really early on, thought, and probably the rest of my family and friends thought, probably not very smart.
She couldn't cut it. She didn't even make it all the way through high school. Like she'll be, we'll see her at the coffee shop later. Like,
Exactly. I was the black sheep of the family, honestly, because nearly all of them went into medicine or whatever. And he was leaving school at 14. But I digress. I think when I went to uni, I didn't even tell people that I was going to uni because I was so scared of not doing any good that I just didn't tell people that I was doing it. And so when I actually said that I got into, communications at Newcastle Uni, I was like, people were looking at me and they couldn't believe that was the case. Like it just totally surprised everyone. Fast forward a couple of years, I didn't finish that degree. Are we sensing a pattern here yet?
Maybe.
So I actually did like 3/4 of that degree. And then I moved to Sydney. I was very determined, I think, to get where I wanted to get and to do things quickly. I've never been one to sit around and wait for the right circumstances or the right approval or the right anything from anyone. At that stage, I came to Sydney and I didn't have a job. I spent the first 6 weeks sleeping in my car. And that's just how determined I was to move to Sydney from Newcastle and get a job and do stuff like that. And that first job was a jewelry designer. So I was actually designing like high-end, top-end pieces, engagement rings and whatnot, as well as just selling jewelry and all kinds of things. So I did that for the first few years. But I mean, to save you the long, very, very long history, I went from that. I've also run pool comps.
Oh yeah.
I've worked in scuba diving wholesale. I've worked in events. I've worked in hospitality. I've worked in aviation. That was probably the most recent actual job that I had.
Uh-huh.
So I was working as the training facilitator for Jetstar Engineering. So looking after all of the apprentices from mechanics, structures, and avionics. And that was a really cool job because it also meant that I got to do stuff from internal comms, a little bit of safety, a little bit of, all kinds of things. And it really allowed me to use all my shit in one place, you know?
Yeah. I think like, that's so inspiring, Jax, like just to hear the fact that, you were determined to make something of yourself. You were also brave enough to try a bunch of different things. There's not many people that have that sort of, grit to kind of stray outside of the linear pathways that people lay out for us and what society expects of us and what our families expect. And I think that one of the things you said before around starting the degree and not wanting to tell anybody about it because you weren't sure if you're going to finish that, I reckon there's some similarities with actually starting a startup as well, because when I first got into this, I kept it pretty quiet because I was what if it sucks and everyone thinks I'm making a really dumb mistake and it's my personal brand against this thing that could completely fail. So I actually kept it pretty quiet for a little while until it started to make some money. And I was like, okay, we can give it some oxygen.
Now it's legit.
Yeah, but I mean, it took me a little bit of confidence to even do that. And whereas you're out there, starting all sorts of different things and trying different careers, very inspiring. But did you feel
I think
that
I had nothing to lose though.
coming from a different place?
Yeah, I had nothing to lose, honestly. I just,
Yeah. So do you think that founders, so potential founders out there or people thinking about it, whatever mentality they've got, whether they've got nothing to lose or they've got something to lose, like what kind of tips could you give them, to sort of get that confidence to take the first step to do a thing?
I think the first piece of confidence is to make something that people will pay for. If you can get that first step out of the way, you're onto something. It's just going to be a matter of how big is this something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you can make something that has product market fit and somebody's willing to pay for it, then it's either a small business, a medium business, a startup, it's something. And I guess that puts a label on it that you can tell other people. Not that I've ever needed a label for things, but if somebody's coming from a place where they need potentially the approval of others to do this, then you might be looking for that label. You might be looking for, what is this going to be? I think when people say startup, it's a big word. Particularly, nowadays, I feel like startup is, you're expecting to become Airbnb or something. And so that word can sometimes have a little bit of other pressure behind it, maybe.
I think so too. And I have to say, like you and I were recently at that conference where Melanie Perkins got up and spoke. And one of the things that, and she's, for those who I'm sure everybody watching this knows, is the CEO and founder of Canva. But Melanie Perkins talked about a 10-year journey, and the mission doesn't change, but each individual year has a goal. And I just thought that was so inspiring, because I often think that I need to deliver and do things in really short periods of time. Otherwise people will lose faith in me. You relate to that for sure, right? And I just feel like now I'm starting to feel like it's a marathon. We're in the marathon of the journey. It's not, you can't sprint forever because you're going to hurt yourself.
When did you come to that sort of realization? When do you feel like you sort of realize that it wasn't, you don't have to get it done in 3 years or or whatever?
My team will probably be watching this laughing, thinking that I still haven't figured it out, because every week I'm like, okay, which like 15 features are we shipping this week, and what 100, anyway. But I honestly think it was so I just went to, I had my first holiday in a while. I went to Hawaii with my partner, and we took, a good couple of weeks off, and I turned everything off. And that was the first time in about 3 years I've done that. And I actually go, I'm allowed to have a life, I think. In fact, I think it's actually important to have a life, because when I was working in corporate, doing the startup stuff was the thing that was interesting about me. Like they'll be like, oh, Jeanette works at the bank, but she also dabbles in this entrepreneurship startup stuff on the side.
Right.
And then when I started doing the startup as my job, all of a sudden when people are like, what do you do in your spare time? I'm like, nothing. Like I don't have that. This is
Spare time?
Yeah. And I think it was only literally in the last few months that I've started to go, oh, I actually need to lean into some other parts of my life. Like, you know, I took my puppy to get qualified as a therapy dog. So now we can go into hospitals and aged care and like do volunteer
That's pretty
days.
cool.
And I started like doing strength training. And now I'm like, oh, I have like some things that are outside of the computer that are good for me. But what about you? Tell me about like your journey to that. Have you come to that realization yet? Or are you still in the everything has to get done in 3 months?
Oh gosh. I feel like we've always known that we were in for a bit of a long, slow burn.
Yeah.
Given that we knew we were going to be capital intensive, there was always going to be a lot of raising up front, building really slowly because we have such a lean team. And I think in our industry, the average time for a startup to be acquired is around 7 years. So we'd already kind of done that research, realized what that kind of looked like, and potentially kind of already mapped out what that looked like in terms of us and how we actually get there. Mm-hmm. So I think we sort of took that number, we reduced it ourselves, and then we kind of planned out because obviously we wanted to get there quicker. But I'm still struggling on what you were talking about before in that spare time business, because honestly, I haven't really. That's something I have not mastered. Is really putting the the time into spare time and making sure that side of the life is functioning well. I don't do that well. How do you make sure that how do you make sure that you maintain that?
Well, I'm only a few months into that journey, so I'm not going to say I know everything about it. But one thing that works for me or two things that work for me. My diary is my life, so I'm actively scheduling in things like every time I go to the gym or every time, like specific things, which sounds really lame, but if it's in there, and I'm trying my very best to not just like actively book over it, because I used to do that. The second thing, which maybe is more relatable to some people, is public accountability. So if I've just started to like this, share publicly, these are things I'm working towards. Like I'm going to share publicly, I'm working towards my first like lifting party in April, which means I'm going to be doing like single rep lifting weight stuff. So
what?
So if I'm going to publicly accountably share that, then hopefully I'll do it. I love
this. I need to know more. What's your PB? Like what are we working with here?
Oh gosh, I don't know yet. This is why I want to do the lifting party. But yeah, I'll put it on Instagram. You guys can find out.
Yes, that's
but
so
I think
good.
the same DNA is the if there's a deadline. Like I love a deadline because it means that there's like there's a public accountability. There's like something that's going to pass. So I don't know. That's how I'm wired. But I don't know about you.
Yeah, I love a good deadline. I love a good 10 minutes before the deadline.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who definitely leaves it until the last minute. I'm terrible at planning and like implementing. I'm much more like bigger, wider vision kind of person as opposed to the smaller sort of execution or implementation. I try my best though.
And it's something that I'm getting better at. You're a bit of an adrenaline person. Like you like to be,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love to talk 5 years from now and talk about the benefits that it will have for people and, stuff like that. But I think it's really cool that you're lifting. I think that's really amazing.
Thank you. I'm really loving it. I'll follow up. Maybe like I'll chuck it, like maybe do an Instagram thing afterwards about actually what I'm lifting at the moment. But like, I can like, it's pretty decent. I know one thing recently was like I did single like lunges, single leg lunges at like 20 kilo like barbell.
Nice.
So like I could do, and that's like a lot of those, like not just like one thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Nikki's actually got some proper work.
Your age and young again, darling.
We're the same age. Nikki Richmond. Nikki's got a question. So I'm going to like divert to an actual work question. Sorry, we've diverted, which is fine. We can talk about lifting all the time. It is a big journey, and so how do you keep that motivation going when you actually hit tough points and walls and stuff? The last few years have been pretty tough, right? So how how do you get yourself through it? How do you keep going?
I think I've always been one of those people who I will get crushed like immediately. Like there's this impending sense of doom. But the next day I'm like, how can I make this work? What positive is there in this that I can make work for me? And it's about turning that negative into something I can capitalize on. So I'll have that immediate reaction, and then I'll kind of, come straight back to, nah, there's got to be something in this for me. There's got to be something that I can make work from this. And that's just how I kind of handle a little bit of everything. But when things are just kind of slumping down and whatever, I think it's important to revisit the big vision. Like I said, I'm a big vision person. When you revisit that and how it's going to help people, and making sure that what you're doing is in line with, what you truly believe and what's in your heart, I think that that's probably the biggest thing that you can do to make sure that you keep on going.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with probably the second part of that, around keeping an eye on the vision. When we had to, our toughest time was probably when we had a month of runway in the bank and a team of 6, and everything closed, all the borders closed, and all of a sudden our future revenue went to 0. And going, cool, okay, this is a time where we could probably shut down, and a lot of our competitors at the time actually did. We could have taken the Australian government's JobKeeper for 6 months and just taken a break. But actually what kept me going was thinking about the students that we were serving and thinking about the fact that they were having a tough time. In particular, the international students that were locked in their dorms here in Melbourne. I started worrying about our university friends and partners who were all of a sudden having to deal with a whole different bunch of challenges. And so instead of, yes, we freaked out. But we did do some scenario planning. Like we got some wine and we just got on the whiteboard and mapped out every single possible scenario. And then we started talking to people. So we were like, okay, what's happening for you right now? How can we help? And we started doing a few activities which were designed to kind of just give to the community. So I did free, group mentor sessions. We ran free hackathons. We decided to bring students back together. And at the same time started figuring out which one of these things might people pay for to keep people alive. But what kept me going, and just to circle back to that question, is actually the genuine care for the people that you're serving and the people in your community. And I think, hoping that you're still going to be able to be that person for them, or that group of that company for them. And I think me feeling like that, and hopefully the team all feeling like that as well, just helped us get through that. So yeah, big picture mission and that deep heartfelt focus on the people we're serving works for me.
Yeah, Nikki says the accountability and deadlines help with the ability to keep going. I think so, definitely.
Yeah, I think so. Public accountability. For me, it's public accountability. I think some people are very internally driven and are able to keep themselves to time. Like my executive assistant Julia, who's on holiday, well deserved at the moment, but she's great at that. She's the kind of person that finishes her uni assignments 3 weeks before they're due.
What?
I know, it makes me sick. I don't know how she does it, but when she came in and realized that I was the last 10 minutes person, we had
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
you know how you had to do group assignments in uni? There's always one, isn't there?
There's always one.
Looks like you and I were in.
Yeah, but my trick there was always to then over deliver and make it extra good so that people couldn't be mad at me that it was late.
Yeah, no, that's standard. Yeah, I love it.
Oh dear. Oh, we have issues. I think I
think that Nikki's right there in that she is the perfect DA. I think that people are really the personalities and whatnot can really make you so much better at a job, and
100%.
The alignment between that personality and job success is really cool. But yeah,
definitely. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because one of the things that we have to do as CEOs is bring people together, get the right people on the bus. So how do you kind of find the humans that are going to surround you and who spend all these hours with you and help bring this vision to life? How do you approach that?
I think for me, because we're in such a niche kind of an area of the world, gaming and esports, not that it's, a niche anymore, of course, it's like a third of the global population actually game now. But when we talk about people who actually are engaged in the ecosystem and work in the ecosystem, it's a fairly small sort of a crowd. I look for the people in there who are actively trying to serve the rest of the crowd. I look for people who have the skills, obviously, to do the job. And I think more than anything, I'm looking for the attitude. I'm looking for the hustle. I'm looking for the above and beyond. I'm looking for the thinking outside the square. I'm also looking for somebody who doesn't necessarily agree with me. Somebody who can really not just go, yeah, that's great, but they can go, yeah, that's great, but how about if we do X, Y, Z? I think that could really, bring it up a notch. I'm looking for that person. I'm always looking for that person who can be like, maybe not this, but that,
Yeah, or this with a twist, right? And I totally agree with you. One of the most valuable things my team did for me recently was have an intervention.
Oh no.
It was I didn't realize what it was. Of course, you never know you're walking into an intervention. But they were like, we really, this is good, but you've given us too many priorities, and we need to know what are the 2 things that if we don't do them, the business falls over, because we can't do 7 things. What are the 2 things? And I mean, I've got to say, even though that was a bit of like okay, I'm sorry, I'm a terrible leader, I'm so sorry, I'll just leave. I had this moment of going, well, fuck, like that's a team that cares about the outcome of the business. That's a team that cares about me. They care about each other and their resilience, and they're self-reflective. Like, I was so impressed. Like, it took me a while to kind of get over the emotional roller coaster of being sad, but then going, okay, actually, thank you so much. So yeah, I totally agree with you that kind of bravery and that kind of, being outside the box thinking is super valuable.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have an intervention of any sort, but I feel like I've definitely had a similar journey with my 2 co-founders, because they come from a very, very corporate background and I do not.
Right.
And so the way that they communicate and the way that they plan, they've spent this year training me almost. Like, this is how we do it. And this is how I need to communicate to them. And this is, because they could see that I had this vision, but I would communicate it in very unusual ways.
Yeah.
I would literally draw up like a written kind of a map of how a feature would look and interact. And then they would have to sort of go back in and be like, right, so, what does the product spec look like from this? And I was like, what's the
just like, I just gave it to you. It's just like the thing I just gave you. Also, hey, Rakul, hi in Sydney. Nice to have you with us. No, I mean, that's really funny as well, because I think, we all come from different backgrounds, and I love the fact that they're like, okay, now let's like processize you and get you into some processes.
And I have to teach them sometimes about being in the moment and intuition and those other things that you can't really, they're not very tangible. But just trying to get them to live a little bit more in the moment and be a bit more subjective, and that's really where I thrive. So we have this kind of, back and forth about what, works there. And I think now we've got this down to a really fine art, which is really cool to see in motion. And we didn't have that before. So it's pretty exciting.
That's really exciting. At Hex, we call that XQ, or exponential intelligence.
Nice.
So we're kind of working on this concept where, you've got IQ as to how smart you are, and EQ as to how good you are with people. And we believe that XQ is how good you are at being future focused and being able to adapt to ever-changing moments. And it's the gap that closes between a bystander and an activator, and a employee 9 to 5 and a founder. Like, that's, so we're all about sort of teaching people how to increase their XQ. And I think you just beautifully described it as a little bit of intuition, a little bit of reflexiveness, a little bit of tech fluency. I'd love to.
That adaptability and flexibility is hugely important to what we do as founders, I think.
Yes.
Somebody can plan all day long and they can plan and plan and plan and plan with every new small bit of information that they get. But I think that there's something to be said sometimes for waiting until you have as much information and reaching a point of, I'll make a decision at this point and just moving from there. So, I think somewhere in between the two, if you can make them both work together, you've got yourself a pretty good plan.
Yeah, completely agree. And thank you, Dora Girl.
Hi, Dora Girl.
But we'll take that compliment. I'm not sure.
Sure, we will.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the audience, if you do have questions for either me or Jax, like drop them in the chat. We'll jump on them as well. But in the meantime, Jax, can you tell me a little bit about your crowdfund? So you told me before that you raised a GoFundMe for your son to go to his first thing. So that was almost your first experience with crowdfunding. And now you've crowdfunded for GGWP. So like what
Slightly different scale.
Slightly different scale.
The first one I was only crowdfunding for like $2,000 just for help with flights to get him to the US. This particular crowdfund for GGWP was we went out with the very wide scale between 350K and 1.2 million.
Wow.
We never actually wanted to go to 1.2 million, I'll be honest. We really wanted to get to 550K. That is what our 1 year runway looked like, and that's what our goal was. So we're about we actually finished up last week at 500. So we got about 100K short of the actual goal. But on the back of that, one of the investors have actually sort of turned around and said, well, do you want to talk about another 100K? So now we're thinking it might be possible to reach our
about 100K.
ideal. Yes. So, we're looking at ways to just top up and get to that 550 at the moment. And that's what we'll be doing over the next month or two anyways. But we did it on Equitize. We did it with Equitize because we could see that it was a very bespoke kind of a platform. These guys work with you very one-on-one to make sure to get the best outcome. Whereas we saw that other platforms are a little bit more self-serve and didn't really get quite as much help necessarily. But it was also, I think, to do with the fact that we could see with the market shifting so dramatically this year in terms of investment, I think that a lot of people have turned to crowdfunding this year. Yeah. And so before that market shift, a lot of the products that were happening on crowdfunding was your organic, vegan, whatever, micro breweries.
Yes.
And literally it was just brewery after brewery after brewery.
I remember seeing that.
Which is great. But there needs to be a little bit more to life than breweries, I think. But I think that they do really well on those kinds of platforms. And I think something like ours on the platform was a little bit different, a little bit of left field. So, yeah, it was quite an interesting process we went through in the last 3 months. For anyone who is looking to crowdfund, I wrote a little bit of a thing on my LinkedIn that was just like, 10 tips or whatever, 10 of our learnings that we'd just done. I wrote it the morning after we closed it. So, it was very fresh and stuff like that. But I think that you have to utilize your network very, very well to make that work in this particular market.
Yes. And I know that you were out everywhere. Like you were, your face was out there. It was on every social media channel. You were not shy about reaching out.
Sorry.
That hustle was awesome. I love to see it. And so congratulations. I mean, closing $500,000 on a crowdfund is no small feat. So round of applause in the comments if anyone's listening here. But
Thank you.
That's pretty impressive, Jackson. And to ask the question that every investor would ask, how are you going to spend the money? Like, what's the plan? So is that just, do you have some big plans for it?
For us, we've got a 12-month runway now. The first 6 months is going to be a heavy build period for us. We're going to be outsourcing and working with devs to build as fast and as quickly as humanly possible or even robotly possible. And then moving into a testing phase while we start heading into growth. So the one thing that we're focused very heavily on at the moment is working with brands from across the Australian ecosystem. So we actually help brands access the gaming industry in terms of eyeballs, in terms of audience. And we're really looking to work with more and more startups. We start from $5,000 campaigns and go right up. We work at 100,000 or we work at 5,000. So we're actually working with a couple of startups from Sydney at the moment. to get their product out into the hands of lots of people in the gaming industry. And I think that's one of the cool things about gaming is that, you know, you can work in, we can work with fintech brands, we can work with VPNs, we can work with fashion, we can work with skincare, we're a little bit all over the place. And I guess that's one of the things I truly love about what we do is just the diversity of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, you've worked with some super impressive brands. You just want to humble brag a bit and drop some of those big names for us?
Of course, yeah. I think we've probably worked with 60 plus global brands by now. We've been partnered with Logitech. We've worked with Casio watches. We actually sold out of their watch within a week, and they asked us to turn off the wheel, so to speak. We've worked with Indomie Noodles, Warner Music, loads, CC's, Cheezels. We love our snack brands as gamers, of course. Snacks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, basically all of our favorite brands, right? So that sounds like a really awesome campaign, and bringing people together to the community is fantastic. Now, I'm conscious of time. I reckon people's lunch breaks are probably about to run out. So I'm going to ask you a really couple of quick tip questions for people that are looking to start things and maybe thinking about CEOing. Recall the answer to your question is the platform used to crowdfund was Equitize.
Yes.
I think maybe someone in the Hex team could grab that link and chuck it in the comments for us if you don't mind. But Jax, tell me about the best thing about being a CEO.
Ooh. The merch.
Yes.
No, look, I think that the best part about being the CEO is the network and the people that you get to work with. It's always about the people. I don't care what role you're in. It's always about the people.
Yes.
And for me, it's meeting people like you through SBE. It's, making that kind of network that you take with you, and hopefully you can help along the way or tap into along the way. And I really love the dynamics of how that works. And I think that sometimes when you're not a CEO and you might be in a different role, sometimes I see that people forget to do that. They forget to network and build that out and things like that. So I really love that, especially in the ecosystem that I exist in at the moment, seems to do that so well. And I just love that part of it. I love the people, the networking, and the ability to help and potentially gain help from others. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think a little hidden piece of advice in there for anybody who's looking to either start something or advance in their career is don't hide your light behind a bushel. Like, make sure you're actually out there talking to people, building that network early, because you never know who's going to come and have your back in the future when you do go out there and build something.
People and connections are always the reason for success. I think in terms of, a startup, I think that it takes a lot of luck, a lot of timing, a lot of all of those things. But unless you have a network that you can exist in or be a part of, it almost doesn't matter about timing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And what a beautiful, thought to end on. I feel like we've, got a few CEO tips in there. It's like, get your elevator pitch tight, do not eat a banana on screen. Make sure you surround yourself with great people, build your network early and, have a bit of a blend of process and governance, but also that instinctive, reflexive nature. And I think all of that makes a really fantastic CEO in you, Jax. And I'm so proud to call you a friend and a colleague and a peer, and look forward to having your back as GDWP shoots the stars out from here on in.
Absolutely, and ditto. I absolutely love what you guys do, and so always reach out to me if you need anything from me.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And thanks to everyone who dialed in to watch us today. And hopefully you've had a nice break and you've learnt some stuff, and hopefully you found that moderately entertaining, because I certainly did. And really nice to talk to you, Jax. Anyone who wants to connect with us, please reach out. Don't hesitate. We're on all of the channels, I think. So LinkedIn, Instagram. I mean, Jax, you're on Twitch, I assume.
All the places. Yep.
All the places. Just Google us. We're super famous. I'm kidding. All right, we'll wrap it up there.
I'm big in Germany.
She's big in Germany.
I'm not David Hasselhoff.
Love it, love it. Okay, team, let's call it there. Jax, she's big in Germany, GGWP. See you next month for CEOnly fans. I will have another good friend from the ecosystem, and we'll just like chat like this again. Okay, thank you, Jax. Bye everyone. Thank you so much.
Whoa, what?